So in greatest likelihood, the vision and the mission is going to be common between those two organizations. We do need to make sure that the vision and the mission is defined and is understood by the people that we're working with. So the projects are actually those tasks that move us towards the accomplishment or the execution of our mission and our vision. And the goals are those things that we put into place so that we can execute our projects. The goals are the things that really define how we keep from going astray with our team members or with other team leaders. So if we've got a larger goal that's made up of smaller projects, and I'm in charge of one project, Paul's in charge of another, somebody else is in charge of another, we might get together as team leads to try to make sure that we're not trespassing on each other's projects. So we want to make sure our goals for our teams don't permit our team members from exiting our project. We'll talk about that here in a second. So for me, it's helpful when I'm talking about project planning to conceptually work with a project that I've done before. And on the screen you see a little project that I had out in East Texas with the work that I do. This gentleman had built a bridge across a little creek, and we've had a little bit of rain, and he said, oh, you know, I think that we can use it. And then we had a little bit more rain and came up on this one, and he said, you know, I'm not so sure about that. So he goes and puts the boards up on the far side so he can get his four-wheeler across. He says, man, this is going to be great. And what you don't see is the third rain event after his hay contractor said, dude, I'm not touching that bridge with any of my equipment. And so he called me and says, hey, look, I want you to replace that old bridge with that bridge. And I went, okay. So for me, that's the project, right? And we'll let you kind of hang on how that project turned out as we go through. But I also have a project for you this morning or this afternoon, as the case may be. On your tables are one or two pieces of pink paper. All right, there are some tables of 10 and some tables of not 10. So the idea here is for that piece of pink paper to be touched by 5 people, one fold apiece, and it needs to be in a paper airplane. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do this. So designate your folds, make a paper airplane out of that. Remember, only one person can make one fold, and no more than 5 people can touch the paper.
They can toss it.
It's going to all end up in your lap. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And a refold is counted as a fold. No refolding. Okay. All right, it looks like we're mostly finished here. Now, how many of you talked about how to execute the project at your table? Okay, I saw one table here, right? The type A personality, the first person picks up the paper, folds it, makes the first fold, and hands it to the person next to him. Not a word said, right? Okay. Then there was another one I saw, maybe, I don't know if you were looking at how to make a paper airplane with your phone, but, you know, we'll cover that here in a second, right?
I don't know when to fold them.
So the peril of doing that, oh, you're killing me over there, right? You're killing me. The peril of doing a project like this is it takes a little bit of time, but it is important that you can end up with something that looks like this, or you can end up with something that's a little bit longer and sleeker, right? So, did we define what the project was? Absolutely. I told you you needed fold to make a paper airplane, okay? So, did it have to fly? Didn't say it had to fly, right? So, one of the greatest challenges that we have found within our organization, or that I have found within scouting, is that I can make a relatively loosely defined project. There will be requirements imputed by the people that have heard the requirements. Right? Yes. And so when I say make a paper airplane, the imputation is it has to fly. Like, didn't say that. Right? So, did it have to look a certain way? Did it have to look like this or like this? My wings don't even match. It's a paper airplane, 5 foot, you tell me, that's a paper airplane. Didn't fly worth a flip. Speaking of flying, I did this exercise, or someone did this exercise for us, right? In a leadership training thing. And at the end of the process, and we won't do it here because it's much easier just to explain what happened, because it was actually kind of fun. It was fun for me, it wasn't so fun for everybody else. At the end of the project, we were going to, the instructions were, we want to make your paper airplane fly, right? And whose airplane flies the furthest wins the prize, okay? Actually, they didn't use the word fly, they used the word traveled. Okay? So what does out-of-the-box thinker do here? Okay, it doesn't have to fly, it just has to go. But it's a great illustration of understanding what the requirements are for our projects, right? And are our goals discussed by the group? When we're doing projects, if we're not discussing our goals, I would tend to think we're going to get cross-purpose fairly quickly, right? So it's really important to deal with goals within the group and make sure they adhere to the SMART goal principle. Anybody heard of the SMART goal principle? It's really fairly simple, straightforward. Our goals should be SMART. It's an acronym or acrostic or whatever you want to call that thing. Your first goals are supposed to be specific. They're supposed to be measurable. You need to have some way to measure your goals. You need to be attainable. Sometimes a youth will set a goal or someone that's unfamiliar with a project or what we're doing, and it will be a huge, wonderful, lofty goal. Great goal. But it's not particularly attainable, especially when we're talking about the last one that I'll talk about, which is timeliness, which is time-based. For the most part, in goal setting, relevancy is inherent in how we're setting goals. I have relevancy in this list simply because in the scouting environment, sometimes our scouts will come up with goals that are not particularly relevant. When we're doing annual planning, what do you want to do? What do you think the next year is going to look like? Well, I want to be dating a girl and whatever. And I'm like, is that particularly relevant to what we're talking about? So relevancy can be important, and we do have to keep it in mind, right? So the SMART goals are an important tool to use in keeping yourself out of the weeds when it comes to working through the projects. I have 6 steps in my projects. They're relatively simple. You'll go and find some lists that have less. You'll go and find that have some lists that have more. I like 6, so they're going to be 6. We want to define the project objectives. We want to define the resources, risks, and constraints. This is an important step. We got to actually stop what we're doing to define the resources, risks, and constraints. We'll talk about all these in just a second. We're going to develop a timeline. When I talked with the group earlier, I said I defined a term that I'll define when we're talking about it. And they said, wait a minute, what's that? I'm like, hang on a second, let me get there. So I'll define it rather than talking about it at this instant. We want to assign tasks. The task assignment is important. execute a project. Without execution, it isn't much of a project, right? And we want to review. The last one here is the one that I see least frequently. At work, when we're finished with a project, there's usually another project right here, right? Or our team members are going someplace else. So the idea of review is extraordinarily important, and I want to talk about that here a little bit. So project objectives. We want to make sure that our projects are clearly stated. If it's not clearly stated, then our team members don't know what they're doing, right? They may think they understand, they have an understanding of what it is, but it may not be my understanding. So we want to make sure that we're clearly stated in our project objectives. We want to make sure it's written down. All right, one of the tools that I use in the presentations that I have when I'm working on a project is that I will take the title of the project, whether it's maybe presentation project or cattle project or whatever it is, I'll put the title at the top, and then I will put the objective below the title, right? So that every time we get in a meeting, we have notes, we have something, that objective is clearly defined and it's there in front of my folks. Where there's no ambiguity about what's going to happen. Okay? We want to make sure it's clearly understood by the team and that everyone agrees on the objective. Okay? So in a volunteer organization, this gets to be really interesting. Okay? Because in the scouting environment, I don't know about the Rotarian environment, but in the scouting environment, we get some very interesting volunteers. Right? I love them all, but they're still interesting, some of them. They may not agree that this particular objective is the one that needs to be done, but they still volunteered for the task anyway. Why? I don't know. But as project managers and leaders, we need to understand that so that we can handle that. Right? That may mean that we put them with a great team member and assign them a really small task or a task that they can accomplish, that they can buy off on and say, yeah, I'll do that. So that we can move the team forward even though we've got an issue with a team member agreeing upon the project objective. It just gives you as a team leader or as a team member, gives us the ability to identify what potential risks are there. All right, so we want to make sure that we identify these resource risks and constraints. The number one resource that we have is people. Number one, in volunteer organizations, and at work, your career, whatever we're doing, the number one resource we have is our people. Right? So we want to identify or understand what skills we have with our people. One of the constraints we have are the boundaries. Do I have to stay within the building to do my project? Right? Do I have to stay within a camp to do my project? What are my boundaries? What are my boundaries within the organization? Can I go out and recruit anybody that I want to? Or do I have to recruit from a certain subset of people? What are my boundaries? Materials. That little pink piece of paper or my now first page of my outline is a material, right? It's something that we use to accomplish our goal. Our language. Now this for me is very interesting. Within our community, this is not that big of a deal. And yet, when we have someone come in from outside of our community, language may be an issue. A gross example for this is, in the back of the car, you've got an open compartment that has a lid. What is it called? If you're in England, what do you call it? A boot. It looks nothing like this. Okay? So language is important. And again, that's a gross illustration of what I'm talking about, but dialects can be very, very interesting. And as you meet with your team members, or you procedural conflict. So this comes along with the different personalities of the people in the group, where one person thinks, I want to attack this project this way, and somebody else says, no, I think we need to do this step first, and not that step first. As a project manager, we need to mitigate how that happens, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But it does happen, especially within volunteer organizations, the procedural conflict. Hazards to our objectives, and there should be one more there, cost. Cost is a fairly good constraint. Everybody thinks of cost. Everybody knows what the cost is. Timeline. So I always begin my timeline at the deadline date. And I come up generally from a project standpoint, and this is just a number of days I picked out of the air. I start and go 10 days in and create a soft deadline. That 10 days is a grace period for me, because I know that in any project I do, I am not perfect, and guess what's going to happen? Something I didn't think about, right? Or somebody's not going to show up, or somebody's going to drop off the team, and it's going to take us longer. So that grace period that I've created, that's just something I plan on. And that soft deadline, then we begin working backwards up to today, so that we've got a timeline to work from. It's called backdating in my world, right? Some of you may do that. When I was first introduced to that, I thought it was the craziest thing in the world, and I did not like it at all. I've grown to really kind of work with it and deal with it in multiple environments. So begin at the last day. You want to provide for the unexpected. Providing for the unexpected is really, really, really important. This is another one of those items that I love to make sure our leaders in the scouting movement know about. The unexpected is okay. Our youth are going to pull the funniest things, and we need to be able to enjoy it. We need to be able to teach into it. We need to be able to work with them. And if our mindset is that it's a problem, then we're not in the right framework to help our youth. So we want to provide for the unexpected. We want to assemble this timeline as a team, and we want to be realistic with our timeline. If we can't be realistic, then we need to back out of the project a little bit and figure out, are we giving ourselves enough time? Are we trying to do too much with the project, whatever it is, right? So we want to write it down and publish it. One of the newer phenomena is that folks are taking photos with their phones of the of screens and of notes that are taken on the board. So when I was doing this, I had a flip chart that was off to the side, and I actually wrote down the timeline and put the hash marks on it, and because I didn't want to knock the flip chart off of the stage here, which I tend to do, as you can tell I'm a traveling speaker. I wanted to not have that happen, and so being able to take a photo and then forward that photo to your team members of the timeline you just established, all of a sudden you've created a record of giving them the timeline that they're responsible for as a team, right? And so it creates, rather than have to take notes, which they may do anyway, it's just a different way of creating a record and providing a publishing environment. We want to assign tasks. We want to be sensitive to the skill sets that our team members have. I work with a young lady on a national task force that's fantastic. She's local, she's a great friend. I ended up putting her on a team that was not in her strong suit. And my wife, who happened to be working with us as well on this project, came to me after it was all over and said, you need to move her to this team, to this other team. She is not a people person, and she does not like that team. Okay? So we moved her to a team. I had the ability to choose her for a different team for another project that I've got going on. And I chose to put her in a team where she was working with a computer. That's it. But it's a very necessary role. I heard a couple of weeks ago, she was really, really excited about being on that team. She was up and engaged, and the team lead was
glad to have her. It's all noticing and utilizing the skill sets of your people and putting them in the right places. So people and skill sets, we want to balance our tasks equally. Now here's where this gets interesting. In a work environment, this is true, right? So you got to be there from 8:30 to midnight or whatever the time is. But in a volunteer organization, we have different volumes of time to commit to the projects that we get ourselves into. So there may be a retiree who has a bunch of time that they can commit to a project, opposed to a new mom who needs the project for the service hours but can only commit a certain amount of time, right? So when we're looking at tasks and how people can take tasks and how much time they can devote to those tasks, in a volunteer organization it looks a little bit differently. And so we need to take into account that timeline and how it fits into the calendar so that we can make the most of an efficient use of the team's resources. We want to create understandable assignments, and we want to make sure that our team members agree on the assignments. This is a big one for me, especially with youth. Sometimes it takes a little bit of buy-in, but we want to make sure everybody agrees on the assignments that they're given. Usually within a team you can negotiate the task and everybody kind of gets on board, but that's where that comes from. And it makes for a much easier process of making for a successful project if everyone agrees on the task they have. Well, so little cartoon there. I'm sorry it is as small as it is, but it says this little king that is there, and he is painting the stripes down the center of the road, right? And the queen is behind him. You have to delegate, excuse me, some of your authority. I thought this was an appropriate spot when we're assigning tasks to talk about delegation. As a young scoutmaster, when I first started, man, I wanted to do everything. I wanted to make sure first year programs were running right. I wanted to make sure the Eagle stuff was running right. I wanted to make sure everything was going right. It wore me out. And one of my mentors came up and said, dude, you got to let somebody else do this. And the idea of delegation, especially in a volunteer organization, is really, really important, not because of its burnout, but because of what that does for our other members. So in scouting, it's a great illustration. In scouting, we do skills for our younger scouts. So think of knot tying. Right? So if you're tying a knot, whether it's a bowline, a clovage, or you can name the knot, we do knot tying. That young scout is learning how to tie a knot. Right? His job is to learn how to tie the knot. In that one activity, that scout's learning how to tie that knot. Who's teaching him that knot? I can teach that knot. I know that I can go up and I can engage with that youth and teach that knot. But if I will delegate that to a scout who may have just learned that knot and is kind of fresh with it, but he knows it, but he then can teach that knot to the new scout, I'm then giving that scout the ability to refresh and cement his knowledge in addition to learning how to teach. So if I've got 3 or 4 of these new scouts that I'm having to tie knots, who's teaching all these scouts? Well, other young scouts, but who's managing all those? I can manage those, but I can also delegate that to another youth who can manage the teachers and learn how to manage and organize teachers and to supervise and to do that task. Right? In our troop, it was a fairly large troop, and we had the luxury of being able to have youth who were in charge of supervising the supervisors. And so what we end up with when you delegate more is creating leaders. So as a team lead, the more you can delegate down, the more leaders you're building. And so it's a great generational process to undertake as a delegative exercise. So we've got then execute is number 5. We want to undertake our tasks that have been assigned. Theoretically, they are understandable and everybody understands what they're doing. we would want to execute, it would have to go up the chain and then back down the chain, even for us to get started. And then if we got halfway through and he didn't like what was going on, it got changed. And it was amazing when the team lead changed to see the attitude of the team change when the team was allowed to execute how they felt most effective executing based on their skill levels. So lane maintenance is really important. As a team lead, stay, mentor, stay in your lane, stay in your roles, whatever tasks you have, stay with what your roles are. Time versus quality. We never run into this in any organization, which is the one individual who says, you know, I don't care how long it takes, dang it, it's going to be perfect. Sometimes we have to deal with that. What do you do with that one person that says, you know what, all of these cans have to be turned so the labels face out on exactly the same axis? I'm like, dude, you know what, I don't care what axis they are, just get the cans on the shelves, let's move to something different. We just got through the project with Scouting for Food, which was 2 weekends ago, I guess. Our Salvation Army guy decided that first time this has ever happened, he wanted to take the pallet jack from the truck and take the empty boxes, the empty pallets off of the truck and put them on the pavement, right? So, as a process guy, I'm thinking, okay, so when we load those pallets up full of cans, right? These boxes are 4 foot by 4 foot by 5 foot. Okay, so when we load these boxes, what's going to happen? We're going to have to put them back on the truck. Fortunately, there's the pallet jack, and fortunately, there's the lift. So I just let this deal run because he's in charge. It's his truck, his deal. I let this deal run, and about 3/4 of the way through the project, what did it do 2 weekends ago? It rained, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained. And so then we were having to deal with these cardboard boxes, trying to get them on the truck with wet cardboard and cans inside. So every once in a while you get one of these deals where you say, you know, I should have said something, but So anyway, the other side to the, I don't care how long it takes, I want it to be perfect, is I'm going to take as long as it takes to get this done. Right? I'm going to take as long as it takes. And somewhere on that continuum, we have to land with our projects. We have to land somewhere between we're going to take as long as it takes or it's got to be perfect. Every one of our projects is going to land somewhere in that continuum. As project leaders, we need to be able to define where that point is and communicate that to our team members. Right? And then the unexpected is okay. Remember when I was talking about our timeline in that 10-day window, this is where this comes into play. Because when the unexpected happens, it's not a problem, right? I drove up today thinking, oh man, I'm here early, it's awesome, gonna have plenty of time. I look over, I'm thinking through all the things, I'm like, uh-oh, I forgot the cable for my laptop to the projector. Okay. What am I gonna do about that? Fortunately, I'm not very far from where the cable was. I thought, okay, I can boogie over, get the cable, and come back. Had I not planned a little extra time, I wouldn't have had the ability to do that. Didn't need it, which is fine. But the idea of planning a little bit extra time is a good thing. So in our adult leader training, in our adult leader training, we have a saying, early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. Now, I did not teach my children that, because what I did not want to hear in my house was when Dad wakes up late, I didn't want to hear this on time, early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. I also didn't want them to tell Mom that when breakfast wasn't particularly ready. So, trying to keep myself out of trouble in that case. So, the unexpected, plan for it. It will make for a much easier team. I loved this cartoon when I first saw it, and then I started in with this adult leader training thing, and I thought, you know, that cartoon is a great generalized snippet of leadership, right? But then I got a little more detailed into looking at it, especially after talking with some of my fellow presenters, and I said, on the bottom, certainly we understand the top image, but on the bottom image, what kind of team are we talking about here? Actually, this team looks like, to me, looks like a team that is just formed, right? You got everybody together, the leader's out front, the leader's showing them the way to go, and they're off and going. What they don't show is what happens when that last person says, you know, if I misstep, this cart's going to run over me, so I want to be right up behind the leader, right? He starts jockeying for position to get up behind the leader, right? Then the next guy says, what's going on? I don't want to be back by the cart. So all of a sudden, nobody's pulling except the leaders, and everybody's jockeying for position. So they get that squared away, and everybody begins to pull in the same direction. It gives the leader the ability smart process with youth. So is this realistic for you to do? And I can usually tell within 10 minutes of being with a scout whether or not it's going to be realistic. Right? I can usually tell whether they are just mailing it in and they need a little bit extra or not. So the process is fairly complicated, and some scouts can get a scope that can be too big, but the responsibility for monitoring that rests on the scout master, is the answer to your question. Okay? Anything else? One more. Mr. Jodry.
I was in your troop for as long as I can remember. It is, you are a credit to the community. I believe that Troop 82 has produced more Eagle Scouts than any other troop in the country. 225 kids. Can you talk about the logistics, for instance, going on a camp out and then the leadership roles of the boys in the troop as opposed to the dads on the organization?
Right.
Talk about fairly large, might as well put it on. Fairly large, close understatement.
Fairly large when I left was 225 heads. Okay, so when I left, I had managed the organization out into to Cutpack to accomplish a specific goal, and then into a venture crew to accomplish a specific goal. And so when I say heads, that's across the Cub, Scouting, and venture crew. So 225 heads. My purpose in being a part of the scouting program is to empower youth to be developed and to develop themselves into responsible, functioning adults. Okay? And so to what Mr. Jodry was referring is that our structure was designed to where the high school youth run the thing. The adults kind of plan it and give it direction, but the high school youth are supposed to be the ones that are mentoring the younger scouts, right? And they're in turn mentoring those that are even younger than them. And we, as adults, are charged with mentoring those scouts so that they can develop the capabilities to be mentors. When you're a mentor, you've already gone through the learning process, all right? So when we talk about being mentors, it means I've already learned, I've already taught, I already understand how groups work because I've led groups. I understand how to teach people to understand how groups work because I've done that too. And for a youth, as you go through the high school years, for them to be able to get out, especially if they earn Eagle Scout, having done their Eagle Scout project, and land at a university or college or a school of higher learning and have those tasks in hand, in pocket, and experience is something that doesn't happen very often. And for our organization, it was, we want the youth to be involved, not the adult. And sometimes that causes problems, and sometimes it works real well. So, thank you.
Robert, thank you for being with us. It was a pleasure. We are going to put a book in your honor in the Preston Hollow Elementary School. And thank you very much for being here. I wish that my son had had your outline when he was working on his Eagle project. We would have avoided a lot of trouble, but the trouble is the learning part, isn't it? It is. And it has done him well while he's been in college. So thank you. You probably want this.
No, that's not mine.
Phone for sale. Okay. So next week we have got, I can't read this out. Charlotte Comer with Charlotte Comer Interiors, who's going to talk about what is art in your home, and Happy Franklin is going to be our chair. And if I could get Patrick Harden to come up here and do our, way in the back, come up here and do our four-way test. And it's up there on the screen, so.
Good afternoon, everybody. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?